The Wall of Golden Stars. Julian lived in a room where every shelf was a kingdom of order. His trophies were polished until they gleamed like tiny suns, and his books stood in perfect alphabetical rows. To Julian, these weren't just objects, they were proof. He believed that as long as he followed his strict rules of study and stayed at the very top, he was safe from being ordinary. The rules were a fence that kept the world's chaos away. At school, Julian wore his reputation like a suit of armor. He was the human encyclopedia, the boy who never missed a point. Every morning, he performed a silent ritual. He would walk to the leaderboard in the hallway to ensure his name was still at the top. Seeing it there made him feel solid and strong. He believed that being the smartest meant no one could ever find a reason to look down on him. One Tuesday, the air in the classroom felt different. Ms. Ananya stood at the front with a box of magnets and copper wire. "For the science fair, you will work in pairs," she announced. Julian's stomach tightened. A partner meant he couldn't control every variable. Ms. Ananya looked at him and smiled. "Julian, you'll be partnering with Amara. She has a very creative mind." Julian and Amara sat together at a laboratory table. Before Amara could speak, Julian pulled out a thick binder. "I've already designed our project," he said, his voice clipped. "It's a motorized sorter. If we follow these 10 steps exactly, we will win." He tapped a complex, rigid diagram. He wasn't really seeing Amara. He was only seeing the rules he had built to protect his perfect record. Amara looked at the rigid drawing and then reached into her bag. She pulled out a translucent, bright orange plastic shape. "It's very organized, Julian," she said softly. "But what if we made a wind-powered light instead? We could use recycled parts to make it look like a glowing flower. It would be unique." Her eyes sparked with the joy of a new idea, an invitation to explore. Julian felt a cold shiver of panic. If they didn't follow his plan, they might fail. And if he failed, who was he? He felt like Amara wasn't just suggesting a project, she was attacking his safety. "That's not how science works," he snapped, his face flushing red. "My way is the correct way. Your idea is just messy." He clung to his binder as if it were a shield against a storm. For 3 days, Julian blocked every suggestion Amara made. He became a guard, protecting his image of being the smartest at the cost of everything else. When Amara tried to adjust a wire, he pushed her hand away. Finally, Amara stepped back, her eyes shining with hurt. "You don't want a partner, Julian," she said quietly. "You just want a reflection of yourself." She picked up her bag and walked away. Julian worked late into the evening, but the project felt heavy and hollow. He looked around the library at the other pairs. They were laughing, making mistakes, and fixing them together. Their inventions were strange, colorful, and alive. Julian looked at his own gray, robotic sorter. It was perfect according to his rules, but it was also lonely. He realized the wall of stars he had built was actually a cage. Julian walked into the school garden and found Matteo, the gardener, pruning a rose bush. "They look uneven," Julian whispered. Matteo smiled and snipped a branch. "If I forced them to grow in perfect lines, Julian, they would break. Growth is messy and unpredictable. A garden isn't a trophy, it's a conversation." Julian looked at his hands. "I'm afraid that if I'm not the best, I'm nothing." Matteo nodded gently. "That's a heavy mask to wear. Maybe try taking it off." The next morning, Julian found Amara at the lab table. He didn't bring his binder. "I was so afraid of being wrong that I forgot how to learn," he admitted. He reached into his pocket and placed the orange plastic petal on the table. "Can we try the glowing flower?" "I think I'd like to see what we can make together." Amara grinned, and as they began to build, Julian felt the heavy armor finally fall away.